Youth protesting police brutality for the past 9 days have got hefty concessions from the federal government and state government. Yesterday, as the National Economic Council rose from a meeting in Abuja, directed the 36 state governors and Minister of Federal Capital Territory to take charge of negotiations with the protesters in their respective states. Specifically, the council directed governors to establish judicial panels to investigate alleged police brutality and supervise fresh tactical team being set up by the Inspector General of Police and raise funds to compensate victims of cruelty by a defunct rogue unit, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, which is SAS. The judicial panel, which will be set up in all states, will also include representatives of youth, students, civil society organizations, and will be chaired by a respected retired state high court judge. According to a statement by NEC, specifically resolved that the state governors and the FCT minister should take charge of interface and contact with protesters in their respective domains. NEC also directed the state governors should immediately establish a state-based Special Security and Human Rights Commission, be chaired by the governors in their states to supervise the newly formed police tactical units and all the security agencies located in the state. Is this enough?
Enough for whom exactly? I'm not entirely sure what the question means. But
Is this enough for the protesters?
Well, I wouldn't know. You have to throw it to them. But I would say that it's good that action has been taken, prompt action has been taken. And it's good to remind ourselves that NEC is comprised of the 36 state governors, members of the government economic management team, and is chaired by the vice president, who has been vocal in the past and even in this current situation about reforming SARS. So this is, prompt action from him, because this is a cause that he has been championing for a few years. Now, I'm also kind of comforted by the fact that there's no statute of limitations in this judicial review. You're not told that it's only restricted to cases that happened as a result of these protests. It's open to anybody who has ever suffered an injustice. This is extremely important, and it's commendable, it must be said. And also in this day, the way this day carried this story, it stated, it gave a statement from the military condemning the activities of thugs who were, disturbing peaceful protesters. And it just struck me. I was actually so touched by that, because it shows you a lot can happen in just 27 years. The same military killed over 100 protesters during the June 12th elections, in the aftermath of the June 12th elections, in the aftermath of the annulment. You'll recall that some people reported at that time that over 100 protesters were mowed down in one day. Some people said it was 1 week, but the number of over 100 has never been disputed. This is the same military today standing by peaceful protesters. So it goes to show that no situation is helpless or hopeless. It goes to show the importance of leadership, and that a change in political climate, such as we're witnessing now, can make all the difference to Nigerians. So I'm really hopeful.
Thank you so much for that.
Well, the question to address is simply this. Would the protesters, the young men and women who are on the streets of Nigeria, would they accept this in good faith? Would they, on account of this, decide to leave the streets?
Yeah.
Particularly as we have seen in the last 24 hours, a further escalation of the protests on the streets of Nigeria. With people saying, look, they will not go anywhere, with incentives being provided for them to remain on the streets. That's one question. Governors have been asked to negotiate with the protesters in their various states. But what we have seen is that this is a protest that has no leadership. In fact, I saw a video yesterday which Omoyele Sowore, who you could say sold the idea of revolution now, and who asked Nigerian youth as part of his campaign subjects during the presidential election campaign, that the youths of Nigeria should take their country back. Now, those youths of Nigeria now, they are on the streets from Lagos to Kebbi to Maiduguri, and they are saying we want to take our country back. When Sowore showed up yesterday in Abuja during the protest, he was driven away by the protesters. He said they did not want him there. He should just leave. Leave this matter to us. We have taken ownership of this. So when the National Economic Council says, okay, governors are now empowered to negotiate with the protesters, who are they going to negotiate with? Who are they going to address? In Lagos, Sanwo-Olu has been addressing the protesters. His deputy governor has been addressing the protesters. They have refused to listen to him. The same in other states, Ogun, Edo, Delta, Oyo, Abia, right? So there is that challenge in terms of how far can this go? Because the government, however, we must say, continues to make concessions. That in itself is commendable. The fact that the federal government and the governors are meeting under the platform of the National Economic Council to talk. Yes, you can say it's a very good idea, but there's an element of hypocrisy in it. If you look at the Constitution, the security apparatus is controlled by the federal government. Now, all of a sudden, we suddenly discovered that governors have some influence and they can make some impact in their original jurisdictions. So there are lessons. There's no time. I'm being told to wrap up. We never have enough time to really dig into this subject. Okay. So we just stay with the sound bites.
Yeah, all right. That's all on news headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael, and Adesu as give us updates on Africa business, COVID-19, and world business. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. Our dependable Rotus Oddiri is here to give us Africa business update. Rotus, over to you. Good morning.
Rufai, good morning, Tundun, and good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Rotus.
We start with the Lekki, the NSARS protests. They actually, yesterday, between the hours of 4 p.m. and 11 p.m., they went to the second Lekki toll, which, is not operable. Nobody pays for it. But it was blocked yesterday. And you're seeing footage from that. It created a boom for Okadas yesterday. I mean, from the second toll all the way down to about Jakonde was completely blocked. You're seeing people using one way. It was complete chaos yesterday. And again, this was between, look at that. You're seeing people right there, riding in the actual middle of the road there. For logistics, this is the toll now, the second toll where it was blocked. You can see that it was being barricaded. And now as you pan to the left now, you see people just decided to start walking, right? Completely blocked, stretching from that end, going towards VGC, and then going on the other side towards it. So Okadas were pretty much, that is the motorcycles that transport people up and down. They were at a premium yesterday, trying to get people there. It's not understood whether or not they will actually continue this today, because much of the focus has been on the toll at Ozumba leading into Victoria Island. But yesterday, this was stretched to the second toll, and my goodness, it was something to behold. I was noticed a lot of delivery, the logistics folks that were trying to get through traffic. Any deliveries that tried to be made yesterday, you're seeing all the trucks that are trying to make deliveries to grocery stores and the likes. They were completely shut down yesterday. Although as of this morning, it had already been cleared out. So about 5, 6 a.m. this morning they went there. But yesterday between 4 p.m. and 11, this is the second Lekki toll at the Chevron area. Completely blocked. To big news in tech, we move to the massive news. Stripe, a U.S. fintech company that supplies payments B2B and B2C payments in the U.S., in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, acquired Paystack, who does the same thing here in Nigeria. Nigerian company, Paystack. They, of course, also are payment facilitators in the payment space. You're looking at the founders. In fact, Shola has been on the morning show. He was on the morning show about, 3-4 years ago as a guest. And it's for a reported $200 million. It could be more. The details of the deal aren't quite clear, whether it's, partly cash, partly stock, or they've offered, equity shares to them. But this is massive. Paystack essentially does the same thing that Flutterwave does, right? And Flutterwave, of course, was in the news because of them, assisting the NSARS protests. So, for this news to come up at this time, this is what we should be celebrating and talking about. There's a tweet from Paul Graham. Paul Graham says, congratulations to Paystack, who are paving the way for the 60,000 users they built infrastructure for, and for other Nigerian founders who will find it easier to raise money once investors realize what a rapidly growing market is. Paul Graham is the co-founder of Y Combinator. Y Combinator is an accelerator program, seed funding program that assists technology startups to train them, help them get funding, help them get a network. Paystack was the first Nigerian firm to be invited by Y Combinator on their program. Let's look at the second tweet from Paul Graham. It says, investors who ignore Nigeria now have to ask themselves, what do I I know that Patrick Collison doesn't? Patrick Collison is the CEO of Stripe. He started it back in 2010 with his brother. Let's look at another tweet from Max Bain here. Maxime Bain, and he follows up that tweet. By the way, Paul Graham has 1.2 million followers on Twitter, and he's a very influential man. Maxime Bain is with Green Tech Capital. Green Tech Capital focus exclusively on African startups. They assist African startups in the tech space and try to help them grow. So he says, and if you're an investor, I want to know more about Nigeria-based startups scaling these days, have a look. He has a database where he's been compiling the amount of deals that have been coming into Africa. So this is massive exposure on social media for what it is that Nigerian firms do. And here's Patrick Collison. He said, I couldn't be more delighted that Paystack will be joining us at Stripe. The African tech ecosystem is expanding very rapidly. We and the Paystack team are eager to invest in a big way. Patrick Collison is only 32 years old. He's an Irish billionaire. He won a science and tech award when he was 15 or 16 years old. Only 32 years old. His net worth is estimated to be about $3.2 to $3.5 billion. Stripe, just to put this in perspective, Stripe is a big deal. Their last funding round they did in late 2019, I think they raised about $250 to $300 million in their last funding round. I'm talking about Stripe now. It valued the company as about $35 to $36 billion. To put that into context, the full market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, depending on the exchange rate you use, is between $33 to $37 billion. So it gives you an idea of how large they are. Moving to inflation, Doctor broke this yesterday, of course. Doctor broke this on the morning show. Inflation now, we're at 13.71% in September, year-on-year headline inflation from 13.22 in August. To food, Doctor also mentioned this when he broke this. Food inflation, look at that. We're heading to 17%. Well, we're at 16.66 now for food. So inflation is something that we definitely have to be worried about, of course, because of the cost of food as it continues to increase. But that's our African update.
I mean, really very excited about what Paystack is doing. In fact, there used to be this big buzzword in the tech industry that's one of the biggest startups out of Babcock University, because one of the co-founders went to Babcock University. And it just shows that Nigerian companies are increasingly growing. And that's a conversation about the tech sector in Nigeria and how we should open it up even more to these people. But when you look at deals like this, you tend to ask the question, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, that what's in it for Nigeria? And it's a really very important question because we've seen the antecedents of other top tech companies come to buy into, Nigeria company. Remember how the Zuckerberg and Chan and Zuckerberg Foundation bought into Andela, and all of a sudden Andela became an American company, and you know what we call the Delaware effect, pretty much in the sector where most Nigerian companies are pretty much registered in Delaware, to be able to get that traction and the likes as regards taxation and things like that into the American market. So what is in it, for Nigeria? I would have loved Paystack to grow to a point, and I wrote an article a couple of years back on Tech City that how Nigerian startups don't grow to the extent where they get quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I would have loved the point where Paystack will grow to a point where it's quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The only Nigerian startup that I know that's gotten to that point, I think probably InterSwitch, has been quoted on a couple of stock exchanges all over the world. So I don't know your comments on that, Ruth. I'd like to hear your feedback on that.
What's in it for Nigerian stocks? Again, if you look at Paul Graham's tweets, it is massive exposure. Again, investors now will look at Nigeria and say, if Stripe is going to put $200 million into this firm in order for them to expand across Africa, that means that we should also, again, look at that. He says it's easier, we'll find it easier to raise money. Nigerian founders will find it easier to raise money once investors realize what a rapidly growing market Nigeria is. So other founders now say, okay, again, here it is. Investors who ignore Nigeria now have to ask themselves, what do I know that Patrick Collison does? So Patrick Collison has made a $200 million bet on Paystack, and this is now going to encourage other founders in Nigeria. If you're a young person at Babcock University and you're in the tech space and you want to start a payment service, you now have more exposure. If you say, I'm from Nigeria, and look at when Nigerian players after the 1994 World Cup were so popular and European clubs were buying them everywhere. You just have to say you're a Nigerian player and you are in the news about being bought up. It's the same thing here now, in that the more exposure it brings to Nigeria's tech ecosystem, ecosystem, you have more foreign investment coming in order to support them. So it's huge. Interswitch hasn't quoted yet, but there have been rumors that they're going to IPO, initial public offering on the exchange. They haven't done it yet, but they are looking at it. That's something down the line that can possibly happen. But for now, it's more exposure for the tech space. It's more foreign investors bringing in money, and it's more support, more accelerator programs that will get companies like Paystack off the ground and expose them to the world.
Well, Rotus, a number of points. One, Patrick Collison also talked about opportunities in Africa. And it's interesting to see that in the midst of this pandemic and the cynicism and the frustration that it has generated, that people are still looking towards Africa as a last frontier for trade, for investment. That, I think, is a positive side of our recent experience. Secondly, it is noteworthy that in spite of the pandemic, the tech sector has been growing remarkably, not just in Nigeria, but also globally, in the United States and elsewhere. In Africa, the tech sector continues to grow by about 30% in spite of the pandemic. And I guess that's understandable. People need to do transactions relying on technology, even in spite of an epidemiological crisis that the entire world faces. 3, let us congratulate Akinlade and his partner, Ezra Olubi, Shola Akinlade and Ezra Olubi, the 2 young men who put together Paystack, that they've been able to grow that business to a level that they are being noticed by international partners and investors. This is not the first time. They've been doing business with Stripe before now, but Stripe has now moved in. We don't know the details yet. I don't know whether you know the details. What we're told is a lot of speculation about what the volume of this development is. And then 4th, let us also make the point that at a time that many young Nigerians are on the streets expressing frustration about Nigeria and saying Nigeria is not working, we are also getting positive stories from some young men who have been able to put in some investments out of creativity. I think that is also a good story coming out of this crisis that Nigeria faces at this moment. Secondly, you talked about the inflation figures, the CPI inflation report by the National Bureau of Statistics. What it simply means is that Nigerians are in a difficult place, that the economy is weak. Now, what do we do to make sure that we get out of this terrible hole in which the Nigerian economy has found itself? The budget estimate for 2021 is talking about 11.92 or 95% inflation projection. Now, is there any guarantee that will happen within the first quarter of 2021? Is that benchmark indicator in the budget proposal not wrong? Even when the CBN itself had warned us earlier that we're likely to hit 14% by December. 3rd point, Treasury bills in Nigeria, 1 million was reporting yesterday, has gone down consistently by about 2% on an annual basis. Stop rates for all the categories, 184 days, 92 days, 346, whatever days, are not more than 1%. And yet you find a lot of Nigerians going towards treasury bills, avoiding stocks, avoiding real estate. What explains this? I would like you to shed some light on that.
Okay, certainly. Well, Doctor, actually, the stock exchange has, remember, I was using the valuation of Stripe and comparing it to the market value of the stock exchange. It's gone up now to 14.8 trillion. So the market value of the Nigerian stock exchange has increased. By and large, some can argue that it's because we've got a lot of foreign portfolio investors who cannot exit yet. Central Bank has promised them that we will give you the dollars you need to exit. Until then, they got nowhere else to go, so they are putting their money back into the Nigerian stock exchange. So it has appreciated. But to your point, yes, folks, investors are mostly still piling into treasury bills. They are still oversubscribed. Because when it's safer, right? There's still some volatility over in the Nigerian stock exchange where you can lose your investment. And it's because it speaks to the fact that our investment environment is not as deep as we would like it to be. So we do need more depth in the market to give investors more options. But yeah, to answer your question, they're still there because the options are limited, even though the real rates of return, when you subtract the investment at 2% from a now 13.7 inflation, your real real rate of return is negative 11%, right? So, but there's a lack of options that's still having them pile in there. No details, as I said, as you pointed out, not much details on the Stripe Paystack deal, what that 200 million, in fact, they say maybe more than 200 million. They haven't given much details as to that. Maybe details later emerge, but it's pretty much it could be full cash, or it could be partly cash and partly equity offered to the founders and also the prior investors. But the key thing is that Paystack did say that for now, they will still remain an independent company, still doing what they're doing in Nigeria, but now they've got this wide base of support coming from Stripe. On inflation, remember to commemorate the 60th independence, Vice President Osibanjo did sit down with the Africa Report and had that webinar where he said that they will open up the borders again. He didn't give a timeline, but if you think about it, there's still a lot of goods that move through the land borders, including food. That will go a long way to tempering down inflation, because it was in August of 2019 when the borders were closed that inflation started to really pick up. So we hope that takes place sometime soon.
All right, thank you so much, Rotus. We just hope that money comes to Nigeria and comes to the Nigerian economy. That's Paystack money. And most importantly, we'll go for COVID-19 pandemic update. We'll go for a quick break, and afterwards we'll come back and we'll talk about COVID-19. Right, for update on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesola Mora joins us now. Adesola, it's a pleasure to talk to you this morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, Tundun.
Good morning. Thank God it's Friday.
Thank God it's
What
Friday.
are your plans for this weekend?
Sleep.
Okay. I hear you.
Okay, let's begin by having a helicopter view of the pandemic. Let's look at those global figures this morning. What are they saying? 38,925,204 cases across the globe, and 1,098,378 deaths. There you have it. The pandemic is still very much here with us, with no approved vaccines yet. At the moment, where are the numbers coming from? Well, Europe. The numbers from Europe are surpassing that from America and India. The projections are not looking good for the continent. Daily cases are up, hospital admissions are up, and COVID-19 is now said to be the 5th leading cause of deaths on the continent, killing more than 1,000 people a day, according to the WHO. Now, they say a picture holds 1,000 words. So if this is true, let's zoom in into Europe. On that previous map, my director seems to be going ahead of me this morning. Let's zoom into that map. Europe is red. It has been the worst hit continent since the start of the pandemic. And as you see there, if we can zoom in into Europe, can we get that map? Well, if you can see closely, if we can zoom that in at the moment, Europe is red. The nightmare has returned, just as it was 6 months ago. And the WHO is saying that the daily coronavirus there could reach 4 or 5 times their April peak within months without effective countermeasures, as 9 more countries reported record numbers of the infections. Dr. Hans Kluge, he's the WHO Regional Director for Europe. He said on Thursday that the continent had recorded its highest weekly number of COVID-19 cases as the virus again spread rapidly across the continent, as I said earlier. So those numbers are coming in from Europe, specifically some countries like Italy, France, Britain, and Germany. And then we are seeing also those restriction measures. The WHO is saying, there's optimism, if countries are going to agree that they will take they will take actions to save lives. Let's move away from the continent of Europe to the US now, where the country has now recorded more than 8 million COVID-19 infections, with spikes in nearly every state, prompting fears of a third surge, nearly 8 months after an outbreak that has killed 217,000 in that country. At least 17 states have seen cases spike higher than any other point during this pandemic. 9 of those 17 are in the Midwest, while 6 are in the western region of the U.S. Now, if you go to the states specifically, you see North Dakota and South Dakota have the highest per capita case rates. Others there, you can see Utah, Montana, Idaho, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and the list is on 17 states in the U.S. But the president continues to downplay the virus in the U.S. However, it is worthy of note that deaths from the virus have been relatively flat in recent weeks, with an average of about 700 cases per day. There you see that graph. You see the 7-day average. Yes, earlier in March, we saw it so high, very peaked. But when you go, as the months went by, October, we see them reducing. And the wish for everybody is that they continue to go that way, downtrend. Now, the importance of testing cannot be overemphasized, and quick test is key to quickly tracing and isolating contacts and breaking the chain of the coronavirus transmission. We have seen 40 minutes test kit, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, but now we are about to get a device that will be able to detect coronavirus, listen to these guys, with high accuracy in 5 minutes or less. The British scientists from Oxford University have developed this rapid COVID-19 test, and they hope to start production and roll out middle of next year. That sounds like music to my ears. I don't know about you guys. Now, they say that it works using a nasal swab inserted into a cartridge that scans for antigens or proteins found on the surface of COVID-19. It would be great to see that. I can just imagine the wonders that would do at the airports, at the schools, wherever you go. You can get your test in 5 minutes or less. That would be great. Also, still talking about the virus, one of the drugs, now this is not so good news, one of the drugs touted as effective for treatment of coronavirus has now shown disappointing outcomes. That's according to the World Health Organization. After a really well-constructed trial with a large number of people and over 2,750 people given the antiviral drug remdesivir, the WHO says it has little or no effect on mortality for hospitalized patients with COVID-19, and it doesn't seem to help patients recover any faster either. You would recall that President Donald Trump took this drug when he was positive. It's been touted as effective. The drug maker, Gilead, says the data by the WHO appeared inconsistent, but the fact of the matter, WHO is saying it doesn't make much of a difference, especially in hospitalized patients and mortality rates. It was a well-constructed study. As I said, over 11,000 people were involved. And finally, let's bring it home. Nigeria has maintained its third phase of the coronavirus national response. Yesterday, the head of the PTF did say that President Muhammadu Buhari has given approval for the extension of the phase. Now, what is majorly different in this phase is that the National Youth Service Corps, the NYSC camps, will be reopening. I know some people will be raising eyebrows to this because we know the numbers that will be going to those camps. Also, another difference in this phase is that all civil servants are now to resume. Grade 12 and below are to resume for duties. The curfew remains in place, 12 midnight to 4 a.m. Other recommendations include resumption of sporting leagues, outdoor activities such as football, although they said there will be no fans, but football can now resume. There are those who have reached out to me to say, so why have they not opened the nightclubs and the gyms? If you're going to open all of these places, nightlife should also resume. So there you have it, guys. What do you have to say?
Okay.
The curfew is of no effect. Saying you are shutting down Nigeria continuously from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. means absolutely nothing. What we see from what the Presidential Task Force has announced is that, look, the Nigerian government has just opened up everything. If civil servants have also been asked to return to work, and the NYSC camps have been asked to reopen from November 10, then, of course, it means that the entire country has been opened up. Now, nobody offered any scientific explanation for that decision. It is curious because the data will be useful, the science will be useful, because what we have seen, in another report that you presented this morning, you indicated that in Europe, there is a third wave, a surge, not a spike, a surge in countries across the European Union, particularly in Germany, in the Czech Republic, in Italy, in Spain. And you see countries locking down, imposing restrictions, even in the United Kingdom. But here in Nigeria, we're saying, look, let's just open up and go ahead. So government needs to explain something else to us. However, it was in September that the NYSC was told to start preparations for reopening the camps. And, we don't know what the level of those preparations are. If those young graduates are going to return to those camps, we sincerely hope that those camps will be ready to take in NYSC members, prospective NYSC members. Well, I don't know whether, they have special camps. They also use schools. Yeah. At the same time, schools have been asked to reopen. So, which means that those schools that are reopening may not be available to accommodate NYSC members.
Exactly.
Now, so what do you then do? You put all of them in the special camps and create congestion. So I hope that there will be an oversight body that will investigate this, look into it, and try to see whether indeed this is a very good move going forward. Now, you mentioned something about the Oxford test. The thing about rapid test skills is that is a problem with accuracy. You have to test and test and test before you can be sure. So if that is being adopted in the United Kingdom, although they say it won't be ready until 2021, yes, we don't know what the situation will be by 2021. But the major challenge that they face in the United Kingdom at the moment is, also about testing and tracing. Okay. Because if you don't trace, you just test, you get the result, it's of no effect whatsoever.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I had a lot to say to you within the time.
But unfortunately, we didn't get the chance.
We'll do this again next week.